70 years ago, Walt Disney started a grand tradition of theme park failure. Don't get me wrong, Walt Disney was a genius, a pioneer of themed entertainment, but he was not perfect. Especially in those early days of Disneyland, Walt and the Imagineers would try a lot of weird things, like a motorboat ride that would regularly break down, stranding guests in the Tomorrowland Lagoon, a hovercraft ride that was so doomed that it flopped again 50 years later, and the weirdest one, the Wizard of Bras, which was a lingerie shop on Main Street. And as much as that sounds AI generated, that is 100% real. This isn't a bad thing. Failure is a great teacher. It's how you innovate and iterate. So for every classic attraction that Walt opened up, there were also a series of flops. Today, Walt Disney World continues Walt's grand tradition on a grander scale, which sometimes means bigger hits, but in many cases means much bigger flops too. That's what this video is about. Hi, I'm James from Guide to WDW, and today we're taking a look at the 10 biggest flops in Disney World history. Thrill rides that left guests less than thrilled, and shows where nobody showed up. These are the poor, unfortunate attractions that came and went with a big flop. Quite literally in the case of number 10, Kite Tails. As part of Disney World's 50th anniversary celebration, Disney debuted a slate of new attractions and entertainment, including Kite Tails in Animal Kingdom. Kite Tails was a daytime lagoon show featuring a series of kites designed to look like Disney characters pulled by jet skis. The kites were colorful and beautifully designed, but they would crash kind of hilariously. As a parent to 2 toddlers, I relate so hard to Baloo right now. The show was goofy in a charming way, but also in a janky way. It made it feel like a plucky underdog. But some plucky underdog stories don't have a happy ending. Kite Tails is like if Rudy ended by him tearing his ACL and getting cut from the team, because it went from a full show with a schedule to intermittent ambient entertainment to fully closed less than a year after it opened. But maybe it isn't Kite Tails' fault. Maybe it was the fault of where the show is located, the Discovery River Lagoon.
The first of 3 cursed locations where attractions go to flop.
So let's stay at the Discovery River Lagoon and examine our next flop, number 9, Rivers of Light. From the beginning, one of the biggest complaints that guests had about Animal Kingdom was that it was a half-day park. So in the lead up to Pandora: The World of Avatar opening, Disney had an initiative to add nighttime attractions to Animal Kingdom and stretch the operating day. This included sunset safaris, projections on the Tree of Light, and Rivers of Light, Animal Kingdom's first ever nighttime spectacular. But the problem was with that last word, spectacular. Disney's nighttime entertainment in the other parks were known for dazzling guests with their big pyrotechnics. But big explosions and an animal habitat don't go well together for understandable reasons. So Disney chose to forego the fireworks in favor of a show that was beautiful, serene, and frankly, a little boring. It underwhelmed guests who expected something a bit more spectacular. It was the lowest rated nighttime show according to Touring Plan's guest survey. Disney retooled it in 2019 to incorporate footage from Disney IP, but then when the parks closed in 2020 due to the pandemic, Rivers of Light never opened up again. For our next flop, did you know that Disney once had a second Pirates of the Caribbean attraction featuring a major movie star? I'd forgive you for not knowing that because I think Disney World would rather forget about number 8, The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow, which ran from 2012 to 2014. Pitched as an interactive, immersive experience, it stretched the limits of what could be considered a show. It was basically a glorified tech demo. You'd walk into a big room that was slightly pirate-themed. Rather than a story, it was just a series of special effect demos. There was a CGI pirate skull, animated skeletons, but the highlight was when Johnny Depp came in, which is a sentence that hasn't been uttered since the late 2000s. Disney was testing out this super high definition motion projection technology, which makes actors appear like they're in the room, even though it's just a projected image. The effect is great, and Disney later used it in Rise of the Resistance. In one sense, it was cool because you got to experience Disney test out different special effects before taking them up to the big leagues. But The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow was short-lived, and ultimately pretty forgettable. But here's something that you shouldn't forget. hitting that like button and subscribing to Guide to WDW for more Disney World videos. Back to the list with number 7, Disney Quest. I have a lot of fond memories of going to Disney Quest. As a video game obsessed teenager, I remember Disney Quest being amazing. A multi-story digital theme park arcade beyond what I had ever experienced from Dave and/or Buster. When it opened, the games were a lot of fun, like Cyberspace Mountain, where you could design a virtual roller coaster and then ride it. A Jungle Cruise river raft simulator, a Pirates of the Caribbean ship battle with screens that wrapped around you, and skee ball. It really was cutting edge stuff. Random aside, the Cheesecake Factory Cafe in there was way better than it had any business being. But the march of time was not kind to Disney Quest. The attractions weren't really updated, so graphics that looked great in 1998 started to look pretty old pretty quickly. A lot of things broke and then stayed broken. It went from arcade of the future to dead mall vibes pretty quick. And attendance suffered. By the end, it seemed like they were begging people to come to Disney Quest, like me begging my friends to come to my improv shows. Disney originally had big plans for Disney Quest. They were planning to open 30 Disney Quest locations around the world within the first 10 years. And they got all the way up to 2. Pretty close. The second location opened in Chicago, but that was short-lived. The Orlando location lingered, finally closing in 2017. Disney's concept of an indoor theme park had crashed, never to be rebooted. This is also our second cursed location, because all the attempts to replace Disney Quest in this building have either been temporary or also flopped, like the NBA Experience, which gets a bonus shoutout due to only lasting 8 months. That's a pretty big flop, and it only avoids getting on this list too because Disney has some plausible deniability. That's Adam Silver's mess. I don't have high hopes for this cursed location, because what could you possibly do with a 5-story indoor arcade other than turn it into the world's biggest Spirit Halloween? Or maybe not. Since I recorded this video, news broke that Level 99 will be opening in the old Disney Quest building. And it's appropriate too, because Level 99 seems like a newer take on Disney Quest. Their big thing is that they have challenge rooms, kinda like bite-sized escape rooms. So my hopes are actually a little bit higher. Sincerely, good luck to Level 99, and hopefully you break the curse of this location and won't flop like the next item on this list. Number 6, Disney Enchantment. In 2017, Disney did the impossible. They replaced Magic Kingdom's fireworks show Wishes, which had run for 14 years and was beloved, with Happily Ever After. And everyone loved the new show. This is a crazy accomplishment because people get really attached to long-running Disney World shows. If a replacement doesn't live up to the original, people get upset. Really upset. So it was confusing when just 4 years later, in 2021, Disney replaced Happily Ever After with Disney Enchantment, another 50th anniversary edition. Enchantment was fine, but really lacked in comparison to Happily Ever After. So Disney fans got upset. Really upset. And less than 2 years later, Disney brought back Happily Ever After and put Disney Enchantment on the bench, but not completely retired. Disney still trots it out during after-hours events at Magic Kingdom, which is weird. Like, hey, you bought an expensive ticket to this special event, here's a worse version of our fireworks. But all things considered, I think things worked out happily ever after when it comes to Magic Kingdom's fireworks. Remember what I just said about a replacement not living up to the original? Well, we definitely got a case of the downgrades when it comes to number 5, CommuniBore Hall / the Epcot Central transformation. Disney's massive transformation of the center of Epcot took half a decade to complete, and the results are underwhelming. First, let's start with CommuniBore Hall, which funnily enough is the thing I think I talked the most trash about on this channel. Who knew it was possible to have an ongoing beef with a sterile convention center hall? Whether you look at Innoventions, which it replaced, or the initial festival center that Disney promised, CommuniBore Hall is a huge downgrade. It's a nice place to sit, like a food court in a pretty nice mall. But I think Epcot should aspire to be more than just the Westfield Fashion Square in Sherman Oaks. And then there's the center of the park. I actually like a lot of the new elements, but it's hard going from the Fountain of Nations to no water at all. And Disney ripped out the reliable fiber optics in the ground that worked for decades for LED lights that keep breaking. This feels like a really big flop, but it's in the middle of this list because Disney could do some things to salvage it. The Gingerbread Spaceship Earth was great, and the upcoming Spaceship Earth Lounge might be a big upgrade. It's flopping, but it's not completely flopped. Number 4, Primeval Whirl. For a while, Primeval Whirl was the worst roller coaster at Disney World. I guess since Disney gave Dinoland USA the theming of a cheap carnival, that we shouldn't be surprised that it featured a cheap carnival ride. The gimmick was that the car would spin as you rode around the lightly themed outdoor track. Actually, the spinning sounds a lot like Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. But while Guardians has an innovative omni-coaster vehicle, which rotates precisely along the track to focus on certain elements, Primeval Whirl just spun around kind of randomly. And while Guardians is one of a kind, Primeval Whirl has many similar clones, including Galaxy Spin down the road at Fun Spot in Kissimmee. Primeval Whirl seemed to be plagued with technical difficulties, moving to seasonal operation in 2019 before permanently being closed in 2020. There's a lot of speculation that Disney closed this ride because the ride's manufacturer, Reverchon, closed down, so getting parts for repairs was more difficult. But the clones are still operating fine to this day. Whatever the reason, Primeval Whirl was not up to the standards of a Disney ride, which is why it went extinct a full 5 years before the rest of Dinoland started closing down. But the next ride was definitely not a creative flop. That's number 3, Alien Encounter. Opened in 1995, Alien Encounter was Disney's first attempt at making a grown-up attraction at Magic Kingdom. And it was a huge failure because it was so successful. I promise that makes sense. Alien Encounter was genuinely scary and unnerving. You were strapped into a seat as the lights go out and a monstrous alien escapes into the room. All of your senses were attacked to trigger fear. Apparently, Michael Eisner pushed to make the experience even scarier after the initial previews.
Joan! Joan, where are you? Keep that thing away from me!
It was an awesome attraction, and a terrible idea for Tomorrowland. Many people went to Magic Kingdom with an assumption that everything is family friendly. You don't figure that you go on one ride to see Winnie the Pooh and that the next ride you go on will make you poo. So many happy families went into Alien Encounter and came out with deeply scarred kids. I went on it once when I was like 10, and all I remember is closing my eyes the entire time. Disney got inundated with guests complaining about terrified children and all the future therapy bills they would have thanks to Alien Encounter. But still, Alien Encounter had its diehard fans, and I genuinely think this would be a classic attraction if it opened in MGM Studios, but they put it in Magic Kingdom, so it closed in 2003. Only to be replaced with the next attraction on this list. Number 2, Stitch's Great Escape. And hey, we have our final cursed location. Stitch's Great Escape was a reskin of the Alien Encounter experience, but instead of a terrifying xenomorph-like alien, you are encountering Stitch. Now, the Stitch animatronic was genuinely cool, but the attraction never really worked. It had the bones of a scary attraction. You're still strapped into your seat, and there are effects meant to trigger your senses, but the whole experience is painted over with Stitch silliness. The worst being Stitch belching and the whole room smelling like regurgitated chili dogs. It's kind of like taking a Halloween Horror Nights maze and then just slapping a Bluey theme on top of it, having Muffin chase you with a knife, which would be genuinely terrifying. Yes, it has a family-friendly theme, but the underlying experience is still fundamentally scary. So Stitch's Great Escape just wasn't great, and for a long time it had a reputation as the worst attraction in Magic Kingdom. It never really attracted any crowds or even the affection that the original Alien Encounter did. It eventually went into seasonal operation before joining the ranks of previous flops on this list, Primeval Whirl and Rivers of Light, as attractions that just didn't reopen after the 2020 shutdowns. Finally, we're at number 1, which is, I think, the hardest that a Disney World attraction has ever flopped. They took an all-time classic show and replaced it with something very hyped and very expensive that guests just flat out rejected. That's number 1, Harmonious, which was the much anticipated permanent replacement for Epcot's fireworks show Illuminations. That only lasted about a year and a half. Not only one of Disney World's bigger creative flops, but one of Disney's biggest financial flops too. Let's start with the creative. While I think Harmonious had a good soundtrack, almost every other creative decision was questionable at best. It used way less pyrotechnics than Illuminations, relying more on these 5 massive barges featuring screens and projections and water fountains. But it never quite worked for the World Showcase Lagoon. Because the lagoon is so massive, the fountains never gave you that world of color wow factor, and because of the one giant central screen, there were only 2 locations around the entire lagoon where the view was optimal, meaning that the majority of guests got a subpar experience. And all of this was at the cost of views of World Showcase during the daytime, since the barges were permanently installed in the lagoon day and night. Guests didn't love the show and they hated the barges during the daytime. So much so that Disney surprised everyone closing Harmonious in April 2023. Disney poured a lot into the show. According to Poseidon Entertainment, it cost about $150 million to make, making it both the most expensive and one of the shortest lived items on this list. While We Go On, Harmonious does not. Disney has since replaced Harmonious with Luminous, which is a much more successful show, thankfully without the daytime barges. That is definitely Disney's biggest flop, but I want to hear what you think. Is there anything on this list that I missed? Let me know in the comments. This has been James from Guide to WDW. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon. There was a CGI pirate skull, animated skeletons, animated skeletons. Why do I keep saying animated skeletons? Now it sounds weird.